Warrior, this is day 16 of 31 days of advocacy here at Lynn's Warriors. Thank you for joining us. January is National Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month, and each and every day I want to give you a little nugget, something to think about. I just want you to think about it. And if you're so inclined, please share the video and let's leverage the internet for good. And don't forget to subscribe. I want to get to that 10,000 subscriber mark, because as I explained to you every day, that will put us on YouTube in a new super highway where more of our videos information will be shared, thus more warriors. So let's talk about something that is very rarely talked about, and we need to start in 2025 discussing this, and that would be boys in human trafficking, boys in slavery, overlooked for far too long. Boys represent the fastest growing segment of identified human trafficking victims. The last really government report where some monies were spent was back in 2022. So now we're almost 3 years later. One of my usual complaints, if you follow along, is that our studies and stats are not critically and crucially up to date. Because with this number one crime in America, I am calling that, okay? Some people say drugs. Some people say this enslavement of people. I am calling it, with my sources, the number one crime in America, facing all of us. And if you don't think it impacts you in some way, shape, form, it does. Whether it's the healthcare segment, the national security segment, everybody. And this is why everybody needs to listen up and listen good about what's happening. But let's get back to the boys. The percentage of boys, the largest identified, I just told you that segment, is now boys, minors under 18. Those boys identified as victims of human trafficking more than quintupled between 2004 and 2020. I feel like 2004 was so long ago. It was a different country, a different world. Anything from 2004 does not really hold. But a much larger increase also for men. Now, actually, the stats show it's mostly girls and women in trafficking. But now we have, in 2025, going forward, boys, minor boys, I want to remind you of that. While women are usually about twice the percentage of identified trafficking victims, men. Oh, geez. I can't even believe this stat. Men are also now starting to equal out, like a level playing field with who's being identified. And all of this talking about boys is fairly recent. Why, after all, we only had, trafficking in the United States declared a crime in the year, let's see when it was. I think it was around 2001. So it wasn't that long ago. And as you know, this is not a very popular subject, although there's a lot of chit chat about it. A lot of good people working on it, a lot of groups and organizations. The bottom line hearing out of the government is it's bad. And we have to come together and do something. No, we're doing it. In the communities. The government now has to step in and help us. And when I say that, it's not because I want government control. It's not because I want, government oversight. Government, because we pay taxes. How about we have resources poured into lots of good, very small organizations even that are working in communities, but making a difference. Because after all, our hashtag for the Warriors is Community Creates Change. Because we believe if we start in the home, in the community, that will snowball. And if we could each do this, it would spread throughout our entire country, and this would finally, once and for all, be addressed. Because, enough. We all know it's bad. I'm tired of hearing raise awareness. We're raising awareness. Let's have solutions, interventions, education, mandatory. How about mandatory in every K through 12 classroom, age appropriate, across the country? Because this is a national security threat. Our open borders, as I've explained before, have let the cartels, who are very nicely running everything, very easily, bring trafficking, enslavement, not only of humans, but of drugs and weapons, therefore national security threat as well, into all 50 states. We do know as a fact they are operating, the criminal cartels, in all 50 states. So let's get back to the boys. The boys are the last ones, while we can hardly get the public really on board, right, with accepting this is happening. You must talk to your children. You can be from a poorer home neighborhood, a wealthier one, I suggest to you that you look at, which is up right now from yesterday, our interview we did with Sherry Lopez, a human trafficking survivor of child grooming. Okay. Take a look at that and make up your mind about how easily one can manipulate psychologically one's mind and bend it so, mind control to get somebody to do something against their will. And as Sherry points out, she grew up in a two-parent home. She went to school. She was the good girl, two sisters, just everything kind of nice. But this still happened to her. So it's something that will happen, can happen to each and every one of us. But male trafficking victims are finally beginning, I would say slightly, to be recognized, especially in the health services. And the thing about boys, and I hear this over and over again, they're so embarrassed. They will not come forward at all. They think it's their fault. I mean, so do the girls, but it's more for the boys attacking them. And primarily, we still have our focus in organizations and government on girls, females. So we have to really, really start also when we say girls, also have boys. Put that in the language. And, I feel like boys are unseen and unhelped and kind of a silent minority, invisible, secret victims. Why aren't we? Now, I know we just fairly recently started talking in America about children, girls, in trafficking, slavery. But I think one of the things the Warriors is going to be doing in 2025 is going to be equally talking about, when I say girls, I'm going to be saying girls and boys. I usually say minors, and minors to me encompasses is everybody, all of the kids under 18. But I want to make a point now of saying girls and boys. And a recent Human Trafficking Institute article suggests that the widely held societal belief as prevalent among policy makers, now I want you to listen to this, as among the public, that males are perpetrators, not victims. And this is part of the problem. Again, it goes into that education piece that we are providing at the Warriors. Understanding exactly, we throw around words like trafficking. What does that really mean? Because I always tell you, I never liked that word trafficking. But that's what it's used. It's used in legislation. Everybody says it. What does it really mean? Stop and think about it. That is why I am using the word slavery. That helps you understand visually, at least my mind and others tell me, I got it. Enslavement against my will. So I'm using slavery. So I think we have to start using words that matter, words wisely, words that are descriptive to discuss all of this. Because to be described in this most recent report, and this is from 2022, even the latest, invisible, secret victims, and that society also thinks, as I told you, male perpetrator, when we know in 2025, and we have so many reports of a woman is involved. Now, it may be a male. There's different scenarios behind the scenes. Who is the pimp? Who is the trafficker? Who is the controller? But we know that if you have a woman who appears friendly, that sister figure, that mother figure, that a vulnerable minor, boy or girl, is missing, and they cozy up to them, they can then much more easily gain the trust of this child than a male, right? So we have inadequate identification and protection for boys and men in the United States. And law enforcement, we're still working on with girls and minors all around. The mindset for them as well as is boys, men, I should say men. Men are the perpetrators. So let me give you an example of something. The United States Department of Justice, DOJ, cautions in its Human Trafficking Task Force e-guide that there is often a presumption that human trafficking victims are female, and that this false assumption impedes proper screening and protection for male victims of human trafficking. To the extent that boys and men are perceived as potential, their involvement in commercial sex is always voluntary. When male survivors of trafficking escape, they are more likely to be neglected by governments and are at greater risk of being penalized, such as by being detained, by irregular immigration status, or arrested for crimes they have committed as a direct result of being trafficked. What that means is, and it happens with the girls too, because I'm trying to be even Steven here, as we say. I don't even know if that phrase is used anymore. A lot of the traffickers get their minor victims to do additional crimes, whether it's getting other minors to become involved in the slavery, whether it's a robbery of sorts, because they view them as, well, they're not dirtying their hands as adults, and they can psychologically really bend the minds, as I've been saying, of these kids, right? Little young minds that are scared. And also that law enforcement doesn't really hold children responsible. This kind of thinking. Although I'm here to say, on any given night in the United States, 2,000 children, minors under the age of 18, are in adult American jails. Now, who's talking about that? Nobody. But the justice system, that's a whole nother program. So, boys also, because they're so embarrassed or don't understand what this slavery is, don't know how to self-identify. It happens with girls too, but the boys really don't understand they are a victim of a crime. So we have to talk about in 2025, boys, young men, much more. How are we going to help them? How are we going to get them to open up and talk about it? How are we going to provide the services they need? Where are the safe houses for them? I believe in the state of Florida, don't hold me to this, there's really only one accredited home for minor boys with all of the wraparound services that one would need to escape all this horror. There might be other types of safe houses, organizations, or temporary, but we need real facilities. We need real help. And you know what? We need to address this. So as we are in Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month, do you know what? Now, I may have missed something because I am busy doing a million things. I'm pretty on top of a lot of things, but I don't hear anybody talking about the boys in trafficking. Let's bring that to the table as an equal discussion to girls. Let us have more boys that we work with. Again, they don't come forward. So how are we going to work with them if they're not coming forward? Let's also, and there's a tremendous, ramping up, amping up, whatever you want to say, with law enforcement, of really getting out there and trying to understand this slavery and how to work to help a person, as opposed to, okay, they thrown in jail or, go back home. Remember, easy to say, but a lot of kids are runaways. They come from the easiest child to enslave would be a vulnerable one, right? Even though I'm telling you it can happen to anyone, a vulnerable child who runs away from home because they have no choice from physical abuse and other abuse. And so I leave you with this thought. Let us start thinking about boys, minors, in addition to girls. I know we have a lot to think about. Always, 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 if you see something, do not be afraid. Call 911 and make a report, because we need records of things. If you see anything as far as an image or inappropriate dialogue, please contact cybertipline.org. That's kind of the clearing station. They will help you. Again, if you're wrong, you're not held responsible. LynnsWarriors.org. You can always write to me, Lynn@LynnsWarriors.org. But let us step up in 2025 and make the commitment on day 16 of this 31 days of advocacy to start addressing boys as well, because they need our help. Please join me. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Let's get the work done. I know we can do it. Enough with it's bad, it's terrible. Now is the time. Solutions, intervention, education, opening up your eyes, reality, facts, truths, because it's happening. And you know when people want a lot of help? When it happens to their child, and that's too late. So let's get in there before. Let's start talking about it. Let's start making a difference. Please honor our hashtag Community Creates Change. And each and every day, wake up and go out and be a warrior.